Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shay, and welcome back to Angelz Insight, Wings and Wisdom, broadcasting from the Media Hub on rightradio.ca. To open up, I just want to say that this show is all about growth, healing, and unfiltered honesty. And today I want to bring the energy to something that has been plastered all over social media, and that is the internet's very big obsession with Love Island USA, and I'm talking about my own obsession with season 7 in particular. This is the first season I've ever watched of the show, so I can't really opinionate much on past seasons and how they relate to this one. But for today, I want to really get into how fan culture, sexism, racism, and political bias are a really big controller of what we're seeing on the show and what we're seeing in online conversations about the show, and ruining what reality TV was actually supposed to be about. And so I think I'm going to start off partially with talking about Huda, just because she is the main attractor to the season. I feel like there's a lot of people who were not planning on watching the show, but they heard about Huda online and her toxic behaviors and then decided that they wanted to watch the show. Now I can say I do not condone her behavior, but I also feel like as a woman, and I feel like a lot of women should be able to understand a lot of the emotions she's feeling, especially as a mother. And I feel like there's a lot of intricacies on who she is as a person. She's extremely layered, emotional, and opinionated, like a lot of us. But I think it's very interesting on how the internet reacts to her from moment to moment, because depending on the day where the episodes were releasing, she was either everybody's it girl or she turns into public enemy number one. And I really, really want to expand on that. So to start off, the way Huda is treated on the internet to me is disgusting. Sorry, but that's just how I define it. It's very scary in my opinion. And I feel like a lot of people are going to debate with me online, especially on YouTube, if this manages to get any more views than I'm expecting it to. Because, okay, let's just start off. She's trending right now on the good side, on the pro sides, because she's pretty, she's funny, she's relatable for a lot of women. And in the next, she's being called unstable, toxic, and even receiving death threats for crying on screen, being manipulative, and trying to set boundaries in her relationship, because us as viewers may see some of those boundaries as being childish or controlling, etc., right? And I can agree that some of the comments that we may see from Huda when she was speaking to Jeremiah were toxic and were controlling, and I'm not gonna downplay that, although I do not mind Huda as a person. But I think it's important to see all sides of the relationships that we see on screen and not just hyper focus on one, because I like to say a lot of the time a reaction comes from an action. So for me, as much as I do not defend her actions, I do think a lot of times while I was watching the show, Huda's interactions with her partners, whether that was with Jeremiah or later on with Chris, were very intriguing to me. And I know a lot of people are going to jump down my throat and say, okay, well, maybe you're just like her. And I'm not going to say that. I just think there's a lot of behaviors that we expect to see from people on television. And I don't think a lot of viewers expected Huda to be so emotionally open, in my opinion. And a lot of people think it's also fake. But I think for me, seeing Huda on TV was a bit of a relief. And I'm not gonna lie, I think she's so candid and open with how she's feeling that a lot of people put on a facade when they're on television. And in all honesty, I don't think anybody would purposely do what she did. And I think she came in, saw this attractive man, and was like, yeah, I'm gonna grab that, and that's gonna be mine. Because like she said, in the first episode or two, she's talking about how she's really attracted to very attractive men. And I think she was just really blinded. She's going on, oh, I'm going on television. This is what they're looking for. They're looking for me to find a couple and to stay with them. And she has a lot of insecurities from her previous relationships. And mind you, she came out on the Call Me Daddy podcast that I haven't even watched yet, for 2 hours because it was way too long and I refused to watch it. But, and she talks a little bit about her life and the reason why she has trust issues and things like that. But I feel like we're also left out on a lot of their conversations, which is interesting to me because I go, once you see an individual on television act a certain way, I like to think about it as, okay, well, what are the conversations they've had beforehand? Is this person telling her, hey, this isn't okay, in a respectable manner? I feel like one of the things about Jeremiah that personally bothered me is his little, like, giggling thing that he does before he speaks back to Huda. And I find it very, it's embarrassing, and it's, in my own opinion, it's rude. I wouldn't take it from any partner, even if Huda is in the wrong, which she was every single one of those times. And you could tell that he laughed because he was baffled. But at the same time, if you know this girl is like this, you've been with her for what, 2 weeks or something? I don't even remember. They were together for at least 2 weeks. You're seeing this person every single day. You're sleeping in the same bed as them. You learn to understand that you're not, how are you still shocked every single time she does it again? In my opinion. You know, she's not going to change. You're saying it's okay. But the more that she does it again, I feel like, okay, it was okay the first time, but I feel like every single time, like, there was this sit-down conversation there, and she was saying something, and he was like, what the heck are you saying? And then it became sort of mockingly. I don't know. And then even now when he goes on lives after the show, after he was eliminated, he still continues to do that when Huda is being addressed. And I don't know, it just makes me feel a little uneasy. I don't like the feeling of it. I know that obviously she lacked a bit of respect for him, but I feel like, I don't know, try to have grace on the internet. That's the main thing that they love saying on the show, have grace, have grace. So I just think the level of obsession over Huda, whether it's love or hate, it's not normal. And it says a lot more about the viewers than it does her, in my opinion. If I see an emotionally vulnerable woman on the internet, on television, I'm not gonna rip her apart. And honestly, if it were a man too, I probably wouldn't rip him apart either. And I know some people are gonna tell me, oh, what you're saying is sexist, because if a man did half the behaviors that Huda was doing, you would call him manipulative and all other sorts of names. Which, yeah, it's true, because it is manipulative behavior, and I do think Huda in a way was manipulative. And I can use the example of maybe her with Chris trying to get him to cuddle her and counting down from 3 to 1, but I also think that's a misunderstanding in its own part, because she's a mother and she's used to doing that. So I can't rip her apart for it either, because I understand where it comes from. And I think even with just her, I just think it's absolutely insane that the behaviors that she has shown on the show are getting her death threats. That's what's absolutely insane to me. And I'm not here to say her actions were right, her actions were wrong, because it's not my place to. Everybody has their definition of what's okay and what's not okay. Especially in a relationship, and it's important that even if she's sharing her boundaries, that her partner also shares their boundaries and what's okay and what's not. And we all have our own moral ground of what we believe in and what we don't, and what we consider is right and what we consider is wrong. So I'm not here to argue with anybody on what you consider to be right or wrong. She's not the only one who has received this obsessive love than hate attitude. We can see Chelley and Olandria, who are 2 Black women on the show, who have been policed and attacked based off the way they're speaking, acting, or responding to conflict. They got the Mean Girls label when they were ganging up on Huda a little bit. And, you know, I understood all sides of it too. I understood Huda saying that it's a challenge. Honestly, you're on this dating show. You know people are going to be jumping up and down on your man. Don't be as territorial. But at the same time, I understand the whole friendship aspect and how you don't want your friends interacting in that manner with your partner. And then I also understand Olandria, because you could tell she was closer with Chelley than she is with Huda, so why try to stay extremely loyal to Huda and not share details? I'm not going to say everything that happened on the show, just because, you know, I only have an hour on air, and I just think if you're clicking on this video, if you're watching it, it's because you're already acquainted with the show. It ended the last weekend. I don't know, I have a terrible concept of time, but it ended a few days back. And I don't know, I just feel like we're not just seeing drama, and it's not simple drama anymore like it's supposed to be on reality TV. Instead, we're seeing racism, we're seeing sexism, and if you can't connect those things, then you need to think a little deeper into how people are reacting on the internet. Because I said, it's not even the contestants that are just being racist or sexist, it's also the viewers. And in my opinion, it's so exhausting to see how the women of color that are on the show are only allowed to be palatable. You know what I mean? Everybody wants them to behave correctly, never be messy, never emotional, never human, because the minute that they are, they're now turned into these negative people, negative beings who are toxic, controlling, manipulative, loud, mean, whatever you want to call it, right? And so now I want to talk a little bit about accountability versus abuse. So we can see that 2 contestants this season, Yulissa and Cierra, were called out by fans for real harmful behavior from before they came onto the show. So I'm talking about them having used racial slurs towards the Black and the Asian community. And through this, they perpetuated stereotypes and were exposed through, I believe Yulissa was through a podcast clip, and Cierra was through a social media post, either on Snapchat or Instagram, I can't remember which. But I just want to talk a little bit about how, although their behavior was unacceptable and absolutely disgusting, that calling it out is helpful and usually a huge reality check, because people like these, so people who have a platform and influencers, when they get called out like this, it sort of rips their platform from underneath them, just because they shouldn't be idolized in the way that they were before. I hear buzzing, but I don't know what it is, and I hope that you can't hear it, so we're just going to move past that. But I feel like accountability shouldn't be mob justice. What starts as holding people responsible and accountable for their actions can very quickly turn into online humiliation and harassment, which is absolutely unacceptable. On the internet beforehand, a lot of people were making fun of Cierra for her lip filler and the amount of lip filler that she has, but I feel like after the slurs came out, I was seeing a lot more like hate towards her physically. And you know, I get it, the way that she used the slur was towards herself in describing something she didn't like about herself, which is so dehumanizing and absolutely disgusting, but I still don't think it warrants the whole internet jumping against you in that manner. And to then, I've seen AI videos making fun of her, I've seen all kinds of different content posted to degrade her, more so than Yulissa, because Yulissa was only on the show for like an episode before she got kicked off. But I just think the treatment, although maybe losing her brand deals and all those things is deserved, but I think that a lot of the grounds of dehumanizing her in that way on the internet for her looks and all that things of that sort is honestly just out of hand. And this morality policing is extremely out of hand, and I'm not talking about it in a racial sense, but also because it's inconsistent. And in that, I'm gonna tie it to another thing, and I'm gonna say, I've seen so many people talk about Austin online and say a lot of disgusting things about Austin. Now, I know nothing about his repost. I haven't gone in and looked at them myself, so I can be educated in a comment section later on. But I feel like from the get-go, when Austin started on the show, there was so much hate towards him because he's openly conservative. And in all honesty, I'm a woman of color. I get it. When he was coupled up with Chelley, a lot of people were like, get him away from Chelley, get him away from Chelley. They have completely opposing views. He's a disgusting individual. And all of it just ties from, he's a Trumpy, he's conservative. And I think that's a little harmful, just because they were demanding that he got kicked off the show. And I was thinking to myself, and I was going, this is very interesting, because I feel like now we're at this point that's like, okay, so if you are openly supporting an opposing party that I do not agree with, then they're not entitled to be on a dating show. And I know that Love Island has a more liberal audience. I mean, I'm watching it. But at the same time, I feel like it shouldn't be us saying that he needs to be removed, and this is why he wasn't removed until so much later on in the show. He was just kicked off naturally, because it's not a justified reason to kick somebody off based off of their political views, unless he has genuinely done a treatment to a person of color that you can call racist to get him kicked off. Then that wasn't really going to happen. But I think it's very interesting because he's constantly being dragged for not how he treated people on the show, although he was a little bit, but for what the fans push that he believes in all entirety. And again, I haven't seen his repost. I haven't seen what his belief system really is. But I just think a lot of people are just talking up. The comments that I'm seeing isn't, oh, he did this. It's, he reposted this post that says that he's a Trumpy, or et cetera, et cetera. And I just don't think that that's a valid reason for you to feel like that he needs to be removed from a television show, especially one that's just helping him find a relationship. I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, he's not going to get into a serious relationship with somebody who is openly liberal if he's conservative. That typically doesn't happen. Most people come together when their views align. And I don't know if Love Island says that's an off topic, they can't talk about it at all, but there's no way you wouldn't get a hint of somebody's political inclination after living with them for like 6 weeks or however long the show is. And I think I also want to talk about Ace a little bit, and how Ace is called a game player, and the whole discourse about whether or not him and Chelley were dating before the show started. I don't even want to address that because it's just rumors, but if you really watch his actions on the show, I think that in his own mind, he is genuine. And there's a lot about Ace that I feel like comes off as genuine. A lot of people are just saying, oh no, he was just jealous of Jeremiah because he got to be with Huda and he never got the chance to explore with Huda, which I can see. But I don't think that's the main reason why he disliked Jeremiah so much. I mean, a lot of people in the villa really liked Ace. And I think it's important for a lot of us to think about not only how us as viewers see them, because this show is edited in a way that we can't see every single conversation that they have. We're used to so much access to these people, but we're not getting all the access, and that's the things that you guys need to remember. And I think at least with Ace, and I like to say that sometimes a lot of people, even if you think that it's true that he just wanted Huda and Jeremiah was in the way and that's why he really, really hated Jeremiah, even if that's true, Ace might not have believed that himself. And I like to tell people that a lot of times, yes, a lot of people are aware of their actions. A lot of people are not aware of the underlying reasons why they do things. So it's important to really think deeply about that. But I genuinely just think that from the moment Ace and Jeremiah and all of them were on the island, I don't know, I could just have this feeling Ace doesn't like Jeremiah. Point blank period. Didn't like him. And that was apparent from the get-go. And I'm not going to talk about the whole love bombing conversation, because I don't know if I'd call what Huda and Jeremiah had as love bombing on either side. I just think that they jumped really strong into the relationship, and because of that, they were considered a threat, but also just not what the experience is supposed to be on Love Island. And I feel like that's what Ace saw, and that's why he was so heavily against Jeremiah, especially with the way that he maneuvered around things. And so, in my opinion, what I'm seeing on this show and on the internet after this show is a pattern. If somebody doesn't share your political beliefs, or doesn't react how you'd like them to react, or they suddenly deserve to be publicly scrutinized. And in my opinion, where do you, and this is where I want people to really interact with me, where do you find the room for difference? Where do you find room for forgiveness, for growth, and for perspective? How many years after an incident, for example, even with these racialized slurs, how many years after an incident do you decide, okay, maybe they've learned by now? Do you believe that people who do and say these things and say racial slurs will ever receive forgiveness? Do you believe they will ever change? Or do you believe that they're past that? Because when I see this hate shared online, that's the first thing I always think of. I go, you must think they will never be redeemable at all. And I'm not here to say whether or not they should receive forgiveness or whether they should not, but it's just something that I always think about, because I think if you're brave enough to go online and tell these people and send these people death threats, then you must believe they can never come back from what they did. As fans, we have more power than we ever did before. As viewers, we have a ton of power. Now, I'm Canadian, so I can't vote for Love Island. But for those of you who are Americans, you get to vote contestants off. But as a viewership entirely globally, we can influence producers. We can swarm their DMs. We can, and even after the show, we're the ones who ended up deciding who gets a brand deal and who doesn't. And I know a lot of you might not realize that or may not think about that, but we do, because how much relevance you give to one of the individuals on the show is what's going to have them continue to have relevance later on. The more you post about somebody, whether it's positively or negatively, is just going to add to the attention that they get, and therefore you are essentially helping them either become funded in the future or not. And sometimes a lot of negative attention can become positive attention, and I'll say that's exactly what's happening with Huda, right? So with that kind of power and no emotional accountability, this kind of thing can become dangerous. So if we're playing judge, jury, and executioner with people's real lives and real relationships and real mental health, a lot of the time it's not even about what's right or wrong anymore. Instead, it's about whether or not they make you feel comfortable, and whether or not they share your views and your goals, and that's not fairness. Instead, it's control. So if we're only giving grace to people who reflect our own morality, then we're not building about a better world. We're just building these echo chambers. And I've noticed this is only with Love Island. I've watched a lot of reality dating TV shows, at least here in Canada. Like, I've had access to Temptation Island. I've been watching that one, and there's a lot of hate surrounding that show. But that's because you have couples that are on the brink of splitting, and then they let each other cheat on each other. So there's a lot of negativity around that. But even then, they gave these men a platform. And then we also have shows like, why am I forgetting the name of it? Too Hot to Handle, right? And I was thinking about it, I'm saying maybe there's a difference between Netflix and Peacock. Maybe Peacock does a poorer job at sheltering their contestants from this level of hatred, because I feel like whenever I sit down and watch a Netflix reality dating show or just a reality show, the characters are a lot more likable. I don't think I have ever sat there and said, oh my God, this person's gonna receive death threats for what they just said. Right now I'm watching Building the Band, which isn't even a dating show, and there's a lot of hate towards Allison, but not to the extent that you see in other shows or in a show like Love Island, where I feel like the hate is so much more, it's coming full force and it's so strong. And I think people forget, apparently there's been people from previous seasons that have passed away, due to personal stuff and their online perception. And I think it's so important to realize that we have a lot of control as viewers. We can fully change these people's lives either for the better or for the worse. And I think we need to start thinking about how severe that can get. And so overall, I think I'm just gonna end off the show here and say what the lesson of this whole video was in the first place. But that if you want to take anything from this episode of this show, or if you want me to make more videos about Love Island later, I can definitely do that and expand on my opinion some more. But not everybody is going to think like you. Not everybody is going to behave in the way that you want them to. You can have a lot of high hopes for a person you see on television, and then they end up being the complete opposite of what you expected. And that doesn't make them evil. It makes them human. These are all humans. And actually, the more emotional and visual you can be on television, for me, is actually what's more appealing. I like seeing real people on my TV. So when you have a crash out or you get upset, and I don't care what show it is, I actually love to watch it. It's what makes it entertaining, and that's why you're so into the show. What I want to say is hold people accountable, but do it with care. So with that, you can critique the show and you can critique the contestants, but don't dehumanize them. And remember that we're watching people who aren't writing a script, who aren't editing the footage, and that didn't sign up to be your moral punching bag. Although they are signing up to be on the internet, they're still not signing up to receive that level of hatred. And I guess I forgot to also address the whole people said that Huda got CPS called on her. That's terrible. That's disgusting. Or Cierra saying that after the whole slur thing coming out that she had ICE called on her family. That's disgusting, whether it's true or whether it's false. You shouldn't feel entitled to do that. And that's another level of entitlement over these people's lives, that it tells me that you are obviously somehow upset in your own life that you feel the need to go to that extent. Now, to every fan watching reality TV this summer, please be a viewer, not a villain. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at Angelz Insight and the DCSA Media Hub for more stories and shows like this one. And if you're interested in sending me your thoughts, observations, or questions, feel free to DM my show profile on Instagram or comment on YouTube. But until next time,